All right, everybody, welcome back to another special Corona Geek. Today we're here with Garrett Olson from ironSource, and we're going to talk about app monetization. So Garrett, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So there's a lot going on in app monetization these days. There just seems like there's so many options. There's banners, there's interstitials, there's rewarded video, there's static video. I guess if you can call it static video. Let's talk about some of the things that ironSource does.
Sure. Yeah, so ironSource, we're the largest independent monetization platform for app developers who are looking to monetize as well as market their apps.
Yeah, let's talk about that for just a second. It seems like there's always two sides to that. There's always the person, the developer who wants to put ads into their app so they can monetize, so they can make money. And then there's also the other side of the house, people looking to advertise their apps to other players, and potentially other developers, I guess. But talk about a little bit about those two sides of the house and what developers should know as a developer and what they should know as, from the other side of the house.
Yeah, well, it rather is very difficult for a publisher, especially we'll talk about, indie developers. You can put your blood, sweat, and tears into developing a product for, 6 months or a year, and then you finally launch it in the App Store or the Play Store, and then the most difficult element is getting it discovered, is getting exposure to what you've just poured your heart and soul into. So really, it's about maintaining a balance between monetizing this app, but also marketing it at the same time. So really what we try to educate publishers and developers on is maintaining a balance between the two. So taking a large portion of the revenue you make through the monetization element and then immediately feed that back into the marketing or the user acquisition side. And so one bucket kind of fills the other, and then as that bucket fills up, it tends to feed into the other. And in a perfect world, you're able to pull a little bit of profit out of the ad monetization element because, let's be honest, we don't do this just for fun. It is a business. You got to make a few bucks along the way. But really, that's the key, is kind of maintaining a balance behind the marketing and the monetization.
It's interesting that you say that because I think most people, especially indie devs, and I'm going to sort of lump indie devs as into the starting group, right? The people who are like looking to make a business out of indie development. They tend to think that, I'm going to make some money, which means that they're going to put something out there and they're going to get some money, and then that money is theirs to keep. But what you're saying, what I hear is that you need to reinvest those funds in order to eventually get to the big payday that you're wanting.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I think, one of the biggest success stories from an indie developer publisher's perspective is Crossy Road. They're sort of that, like, everybody loves them because they were the small guys and then they hit it big. But in reality, there are millions of, indie developers out there, and unfortunately, they're all not going to have that same success. So it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's really kind of getting a balance between one and the other. And of course, we always like to get featured by either Apple or Google, but that's few and far between. So there's a big dilemma out there, and it's ultimately what falls on our shoulders about educating the community on sort of the best way to manage both sides between the monetization and the marketing elements.
Okay. So let's talk about, we mentioned just a moment ago that there's banner ads, there's interstitials, there's all that kind of stuff like that. Let's talk about rewarded video, because that seems like that's the really hot thing these days. And from what I hear, pays more than banner ads and interstitials. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but let's talk about rewarded video.
Sure. Yeah. So that's exactly how I pitch rewarded video. It's effectively the new hotness these days. It's been around for a number of years, but if you go through the top charts, you're going to find that the vast majority of publishers who are monetizing via ads are utilizing rewarded video. And if you take a look at the ad unit itself, it's good for everybody in the sense that it's good for the publisher, it's good for the user, and it's good for the advertiser. So assuming that some folks who are listening don't necessarily know what rewarded video is, it's an opt-in ad unit. So as opposed to a traditional interstitial, for instance, that's system initiated, a rewarded video is user initiated. So if I'm a user and I'm playing an app, and let's say there's a virtual currency of gold coins, and you might visit the store, and for 99 cents, you can buy a pack of gold coins. But in lieu of that, maybe I want to earn some gold coins by watching a video. That's the opt-in element for rewarded video. So I'm a user, I click on that traffic driver, full screen, high quality video ad appears, 15 to 30 seconds. Upon the completion of that, I'm then rewarded with whatever the virtual currency is. So that's great from the user's perspective because I made the conscious decision to click on that traffic driver to watch this ad, and then I'm actually rewarded for it at the end. It's good for the advertiser because you're getting very, very high quality from those users who are engaging with the ads. And then the other thing, Charles, you mentioned from a payout perspective, we see very, very strong effective CPMs for rewarded video. Just speaking on behalf of our own demand, we consistently see over $20, $25 eCPMs. So compared to your traditional interstitial units, where you might be looking at the 50 cents, maybe to $5 range, depending on the environment, of course, because every single app is different. But the payout, it can be, 2, 3, 4, even 5x of what like interstitials might be.
Well, let's talk about level of effort here, because one of the things that I'm personally a lazy programmer. So if I can copy paste a piece of code into my app and throw up some banner ads, that seems a whole lot easier to me than implementing rewarded anything really, because that sounds like more work. So I know we have just launched a plugin, an ironSource plugin. But from your end of things, talk about how easy it is or not easy it is to implement a rewarded video in your app.
Yeah. Well, being the sales guy that I am, I'm going to tell you it's the easiest thing since sliced bread. But no, so really the solution that we bring to the table. So yes, we do have plugin support for Corona publishers, and we have a unified SDK. So our one SDK for iOS or Android houses all of our individual ad units. So it has rewarded video. We do offer interstitial as well. And then we also have offer wall, which is another opt-in ad unit.
And when you say unified SDK, now do I have to go in and create placement IDs for each one of my apps, by iOS and Android, or is that just one app ID?
So you have the option. Of course, depending on how granular you want to get in the reporting data, then you can create multiple placements for the individual ad units, or you can just do one. It's entirely up to you.
Okay. And what do you see in terms of planning? I mean, do developers really have to sit down and kind of sketch out the flow of things, or is it just something that they can just say, hey, you know what, I want every third gameplay, I want to show a video, and if that person watches that video, then I'll give them a certain number of tokens in my game.
Yeah. So within our platform, developers have a tremendous amount of tools and levers that they can pull in terms of how they want to manage the frequency of the ads, when and where they happen. So we do have the ability to do multiple placements for rewarded video. So historically, publishers and developers might find that you would put the ad unit rewarded video in your shop with the rest of your IAP. It just might make sense to us. Well, if the user's maybe going to buy some coins, I might want to also reward them some free coins in the same location. But that's not always the case. So what we have in our platform is this ability to do multiple placements. So you can put a traffic driver in the store, you could put it at the end of a level, or if it's if the style of game is like an endless runner, for instance, and you're going through a level and then maybe you die and you want to offer the user to revive their character by watching the video, is you have all of these abilities within the platform to define multiple locations of where you want the traffic driver to exist. And then we also break down that reporting on each individual location. So you can see where you're getting the most engagement, where you're getting the most completions, the best eCPM performance. It is tremendously granular depending on how deep you want to look into the information.
Have you heard any sort of guidelines on how to balance out rewarding the player versus keeping the player sort of engaged? I mean, it seems like you want to give them something, but you don't want to give them everything.
Sure. So the actual reward amounts that you can give the user, that's all dictated server side on our platform. So let's say watch this video, earn 50 free coins, and so the users are watching videos, they're earning currency, and as they're going through the gameplay, you're finding that 50 free coins just isn't really enough to do anything. You're having to watch quite a few videos, and it's just not attractive. So you can actually log into our dashboard. You can click on that individual placement, change 50, maybe make it 80, click save, and that change happens instantaneously because everything is configured on the server side. So you can go down, it's entirely up to the developer.
Well, that's very attractive because now as a developer, I don't have to republish the game. I don't have to go in and fiddle with the bits and then republish an update. I can just adjust it on the server side.
You got it.
So do you see developers then matching that with analytics and then trying to figure out what's the best balance? I mean, how do they kind of go about monitoring this and then tweaking?
Sure. So the industry has really kind of been forced to look at the one metric, effective CPM, on how they want to grade performance of individual networks. Now, talking on what you said in terms of the analytical components, our platform has arguably the most transparent and in-depth reporting, such that we really try to educate the community on not to just focus on the effective CPM in terms of how you determine how that ad unit is doing. But we actually break down metrics all the way down to ARPDAU, which is the average revenue per daily active user. We have ARPDEU, which is average revenue per daily engaged user. So depending on how granular you want to get with the data, we can actually tell you how much revenue you're making between the users just visiting the application on a daily basis versus those users who are actually engaging with the ads. So if you want to know where your revenue is coming from, we can tell you, on a individual user basis.
So just to spell it out there for anybody who missed it, when we're talking about a daily active user, we're talking about someone who comes and actually uses the app itself, and then maybe the engaged user is somebody who actually accepts one of the rewarded ads.
Yep, exactly. And we break everything down within our SDK.
Okay. Yeah. I know it can be a little confusing because when we go to these events, there will be a panel and if you're in the industry, you shortcut things by saying DAO or EU or whatever. And then you get up on a panel and people are like throwing terms back and forth and you're like, I don't know what they're talking about anymore.
There's a bit of alphabet soup going on in this business.
It is, but then when you try to condense these concepts down into a phrase and then have to say that phrase over and over again, especially at a panel where it's just like, it gets a little repetitive. So it makes sense to just sort of condense it. But thank you for explaining that, because that is an important piece, I think, for developers to kind of educate themselves as they go and then understand these concepts. And then they can start to use the alphabet soup themselves.
Exactly. Right.
So let's talk about, so that's rewarded video, and that sounds very approachable. And I love the fact that you can edit on or manage on the server side and adjust your rewards and things like that. Let's talk about other types of monetization. So in our discussions before, we had talked about offer walls.
Yep.
And so if you would kind of give everybody an idea of what an offer wall is in case they haven't experienced it. And then let's talk about, the future of offer walls.
Sure. So Offerwall has been around much longer than rewarded video. It's similar to rewarded video. It is opt-in, meaning it's user initiated. So again, we're maintaining a very pleasurable user experience. It's not initiated by the system. And Offerwall, I'm a huge fan of Offerwall, arguably from a revenue perspective. So as I was mentioning, some of the eCPMs you can see for rewarded video might be around the $20 and up range. Offerwall is significantly higher. Those eCPMs, they tend to start around the $30 or $40 range, and they can go clear over $100. So I know the dollar signs are starting to pop up in your eyes right now, but it's one of my favorite ad units out there because it complements rewarded video extremely well. Common use case for Offerwall is if a style of game has two versions of currencies. Maybe they have a soft currency and there's a hard currency, developer might traditionally use rewarded video for the soft currency because it's a very quick user flow. Click on a button, watch a video, you get your reward. Offer wall is a little bit different. So when you launch an offer wall, it's a full screen list of offers, plain and simple. These offers range anywhere from surveys to sign up for a free trial of Netflix to install this application. And then the reward amount is listed next to these offers on the side. So we're completely transparent to the user in terms of what you have to do and what you're going to get out of it. And it's very straightforward, and users tend to flock to it very, very well.
Okay, but it does sound like, as you say, the offer wall, even though it pays a little more, well, maybe even significantly more, it does break the user's flow in the game, and maybe takes them out to some other place where they have to.
Right. So I just refer to that as a added friction, if you will. So the user, there's going to be more required by them, but they're also going to get more in return. And that's why I think the offer wall complements rewarded video extremely well, because you're going to have multiple types of users who play the game. You're going to have the freeloaders who are going to play your game, never once in their lifetime spend a penny via in-app purchase.
That would be me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm accountable as well. Then you can have your users who are very inclined to engage with ads. They might also never make any in-app purchase, but you're going to have users who are going to be willing to do both. And the way that I look at it, if I'm a developer and I'm effectively running my business, I want to give my users as many options as possible to allow them to progress within the game. And in turn, the more options I'm giving them, the more I'm effectively going to monetize off of those users.
Now, let me ask you this: is there a way to, I'm going to use the word pre-sell, and it might sound a little weird in the app space, but is there a way to sort of pre-sell or prepare the user, or maybe walk them through the offer wall process? I mean, you instead of just having an offer and they tap that and then they go someplace else, is there a mechanism for being able to sort of collect a little bit of information from that user and then pass it to the offer? Is that something that is available that kind of would make the process easier, or is that just not exist in the app space yet?
That's a little tricky in itself. That's why, in the offer wall environment itself, we try to be as transparent as possible to the user and tell them, what they have to do literally from start to finish in order to earn their reward for that particular offer.
Okay. Yeah. I know online, when there's those types of offers that are connected to, you get paid, but you get paid when the user completes the process. Then, there's a lot of people who work hard on trying to make sure that process actually gets completed, and there's some creative solutions to that. So that's interesting. In terms of, so let's talk then in terms of how do you balance that out between, I mean, when do you feel like there's the best place to put in an offer wall when potentially what you're asking the user to do is to jump outside of the app? Mm-hmm. You think, is there a good time?
Yeah, I mean, offer wall is a little, because there's additional friction related to it. There are less placements, if you will, for offer wall. So similar to rewarded video interstitial, we do support the ability for publishers to put in multiple placements for the offer wall. But more often than not, the offer wall is going to reside in the shop, because typically the hard currencies are associated with it. And in the shop is more often where users are actually going to be making in-app purchases for the hard currencies. And one thing that is definitely worth mentioning is I feel as though that the community of publishers might shy away from ads, because the concept, or at least the mindset, is that you're going to be cannibalizing your paying users. Well, that's not actually the case. You have to take into consideration, out of 100% of your users, how many of them are actually spending real money on in-app purchases. And honest to goodness, if you have 2, 3, maybe even 4% of users spending real money, you are killing it. You are doing a fantastic job by monetizing through in-app purchases. So that's what we try to bring to the table for the ad monetization, is monetizing that 95, 96% plus. And one really fascinating thing that we've noticed over the 7 years of doing this is players that engage with ads actually end up converting to paying users over a period of time. Players who engage with ads are 2 times more likely to actually spend money via in-app purchase. Because it might sound a little crazy, but we're actually in the business of converting your non-paying to paying users, because that's going to help you monetize, 2x of what you were effectively doing before. But that's one thing that I really wanted to make a point of, is there's this mindset that, well, I'm going to kill my paying users by introducing ads, specifically rewards-based ads, and that's definitely not the case.
Yeah, there's a couple of concepts out there. One is somebody needs to see an ad 7 times before they'll make a purchase. The first time they see it, they're like, oh, that's I don't need that, and then over time they soften up to the idea, and eventually they're like, oh, well, maybe I'll give it a try, right? So there's that, and then there's also a good book out there. I think it's like The History of Free or something like that, where the author talks about it's harder to go from 0 to something than it is to go from something to something bigger. And I can see here where if you're getting the user to at least engage with an ad, then when you bring up the possibility of an in-app purchase, then you're not just going from 0 to, hey, let's get married. So
Exactly.
seems like a nice transition. So, okay, well, I tell you what, I want the developers definitely to know that there's a Corona plugin, of course, and an ironSource Corona plugin that they can use, and we'll put a link in the show notes so they can go look at the documentation and get started with that. On the ironSource side of things, what do they need to do to get signed up and get going?
Very straightforward. We have a website, which is great. And all you do is you click to create an account. There's a click-through agreement. And once you go through there, you have instant access to our dashboard. We have a knowledge center with our SDK and documentation.
Okay, I will put a link in the show notes so that everybody can go and sign up for ironSource. And Garrett, we appreciate you being here and giving us a little bit of education on app monetization.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Charles. I appreciate it.